Did you know that there's a part of the US that experiences nighttime for months? How about the fact that Kentucky sits on a sea? Or that there's a landmass in the US that's actually expanding? US geography is full of bizarre facts and surprises you would never imagine. So get ready. We're about to explore 50 more insane facts about US geography. Kicking us off with number 50. Florida is home to thousands of sinkholes. The Sunshine State offers so much: golden beaches, diverse wildlife, retirement homes, and of course, Florida Man. But it's also apparently a great place to fall through the surface of the earth. A substantial part of Florida sits on top of limestone, which is easily dissolved by water. And because of this, several sinkholes have opened up under the surface. These include sinkholes off the coast, like the giant sinkhole 50 miles southwest of Sarasota, called the Green Banana. This monster lies around 155 feet under the Gulf of Mexico's surface. Despite the prevalence of sinkholes, Floridians seem to take it in stride, nicknaming Central Florida Sinkhole Valley. Fact 49. You can stand in 4 states at once. At the appropriately named Four Corners Monument, you can do something pretty surreal: stand in 4 states at the same time. This is the only spot in the US where 4 state borders meet: Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah, all thanks to their largely square shapes. Fact number 48. The Rocky Mountains are still growing. The Appalachian Mountains stopped growing around 220 million years ago. But the Rocky Mountains are, geologically speaking, youngsters, only 65 to 35 million years old, and they continue to grow even today. That's why the main mountain range of the US West Coast is much taller than the Appalachian Mountains, with the tallest mountain reaching up to 14,440 feet, while the tallest mountain in Appalachia only reaches up to 6,684 feet. Fact 47. Kentucky is almost evenly split between 2 time zones. Many large states are split into different time zones, but Kentucky is unique because it is practically split down the middle. The western part of the state, including important cities like Bowling Green, sits in the Central Time Zone, while the eastern part of the state sits in Eastern Time, or EST. Next up, fact 46. The US has the largest island in the largest lake in the largest island in the largest lake in the world. The US side of Lake Superior, the largest of the Great Lakes, includes the Apostle Islands, a group of 22 islands known for kayaking, hiking, and other outdoor adventures in the area, and Isle Royale, the largest island in the lake by far. Isle Royale has several lakes on it, the largest of which is Lake Siskiwit. And that lake has a few tiny islands, the largest of which is Ryan Island. All this is a result of the glacial activity that originally formed the Great Lakes, leaving plenty of bodies of water and islets scattered behind. Fact 45. Nevada has over 600 ghost towns. Nevada has over 600 abandoned towns, many of them boom and bust towns left over from the gold rush and railroad construction heyday of the state. The most famous ghost town by far is Rhyolite, which was founded in 1905 and sits on the eastern border of Death Valley National Park. Fact 44. Minnesota does not have 10,000 lakes. Minnesota is known as the land of 10,000 lakes, but that nickname isn't actually true. In fact, Minnesota has around 11,800 lakes, with some sources claiming over 14,000 throughout the state. That leads us into our next fact, number 43. Minnesota doesn't have the most lakes of any state. Despite its reputation, Minnesota is not the most lake-covered state in the country. That honor goes to Alaska, with a whopping 3.2 million lakes throughout its territory, although only around 3,200 of them have been named. The sheer number of lakes is mostly due to past glacial activity, rainfall, and the current Arctic climate, which causes glaciers and permafrost to melt, creating millions upon millions of lakes. Fact number 42. The US has the only territory in the UTC-12 time zone. In addition to the 50 main states, the US has many territories abroad, mostly in the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. Most of its territories in the Pacific, with the exception of Guam, fall under the US minor outlying islands. These include Howland and Baker Islands, which have the distinction of being the only landmasses in the world that fall within the rarest time zone on Earth. UTC -12. Though other countries and islands in the area, like Tonga, Fiji, and Samoa, fall within similar longitudes, they've decided to stick with neighboring time zones instead, to facilitate easier communication and working relationships with their neighbors. However, Howland and Baker Islands are uninhabited, functioning mostly as wildlife refuges and nature preserves today. Keeping with the theme of separation, fact number 41. One state capital can't be accessed by road. Juneau, Alaska, is surrounded by mountains and glaciers, making driving into it almost impossible. For that reason, people have to get to Juneau by sea or air, making it the only state capital that can't be accessed by road. Okay, technically, Honolulu can't be accessed by road from the rest of the mainland US either. But it does have roads leading to it from the rest of the island, so we won't count it here. Fact number 40. The US-Canada border is the longest undefended border in the world. Maybe it's because of the friendly relations between the two nations, or maybe it's the miles of snow-covered forests and ice-cold lakes acting as a natural barrier. Either way, neither country has felt the need to build much in the way of border defenses. That makes the US-Canada border, which adds up to almost 5,525 miles, the longest undefended border in the world. Fact 39. 10% of the world's freshwater is in Lake Superior. Everyone knows that the Great Lakes are huge, but did you know that Lake Superior, the largest of them all, is so large that 10% of the entire world's freshwater supply is held within it? It's the largest freshwater lake by surface area in the world. It covers 31,700 square miles with an average depth of 483 feet. Fact number 38. The Florida Keys are partly made of coral. The Florida Keys, made up of over 1,700 named islands and many extra minor ones, expand off the southern tip of Florida into the Gulf of Mexico. In addition to being home to North America's only coral reef, the Keys themselves are partly made of coral as well. Specifically, the Upper Keys are made of the remains of ancient coral reefs that thrived during the Pleistocene epoch 125,000 years ago, when sea levels were much higher. Meanwhile, the Lower Keys are mostly made of sandbars. Fact 37. The US had a city larger than London in 1100. The Cahokia Mounds are a popular tourist attraction in Illinois and are the largest pre-Columbian site north of Mexico. They're also the remains of a massive Native American city that was flourishing all the way back in the 12th century. The mounds cover around 4,000 acres or 1,600 hectares, and based on the findings there, archaeologists estimate the population to have been around 20,000 people in 1100. At that time, the city of London had just over 15,000 people. Details about the civilization, including why it ended up disappearing, remain unknown to this day though. Fact 36. The Salton Sea was the result of poor construction and led to its abandonment. In 1905, an irrigation canal was being built in the Imperial Valley near the then Salton Sink that had formed thanks to the San Andreas Fault activity in the area. During the construction, the Colorado River breached a shoddy canal, leading to water pouring into the sink, making it the Salton Sea. Though this would soon make it a premier destination within California, the way it was formed would also lead to its downfall. The Salton Sea kept getting replenished by the irrigation runoff in the area, but there was one big problem. The water flowing in had nowhere to go. Over time, it kept depositing salt until the sea became 50% saltier than the ocean. This killed off most of the fish and other living things in the sea, leading to dead animal bodies washing up on shore and a stench that remains to this day. Local hotels had no way to put a positive spin on that, and eventually, the Salton Sea was mostly abandoned. Fact 35. There's only one tropical rainforest in U.S. territory. El Yunque National Forest is on the Caribbean island of Puerto Rico. Most of the mainland U.S., with the exception of the very tip of Florida, doesn't have the climate to support a rainforest, making El Yunque the only tropical rainforest on U.S. territory. Even at a massive 29,000 acres, it's still one of the smallest forests within the U.S. It's also one of the most diverse when it comes to plants and wildlife. That being said, the U.S. does have plenty of temperate rainforests in the Pacific Northwest and Appalachian Mountains, one of the most famous being in Washington's Olympic National Park. Fact 34. Water flows into 3 oceans from one mountain. In Montana's Glacier National Park lies the Triple Divide Peak. Though most water in the U.S. flows toward one ocean, depending on which watershed it's located in, water from the Triple Divide Peak flows into the Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, and even the Arctic Ocean. That's because 3 massive river systems come together at this point. Water can either go into the Mississippi and Missouri rivers, ending up in the Gulf of Mexico, the Columbia River that empties into the Pacific Ocean, or the Saskatchewan River that winds up into Hudson Bay, and eventually the Arctic Ocean. Fact 33. Niagara Falls is not the tallest waterfall in the U.S. The honor of the tallest waterfall in the country goes to Yosemite Falls in Yosemite National Park. Water at the top of the waterfall plunges 2,400 feet toward the base below. Niagara Falls is famous partly because it provides a very scenic view, but mostly because it's the largest waterfall by width and volume. At peak flow, more than 700,000 gallons per second rush towards its base at 25 miles an hour. Number 32. St. Augustine is the oldest continuously inhabited town in the U.S. Spanish explorers founded St. Augustine, Florida in 1565, making it the oldest continuously inhabited town in the U.S. Older Native American settlements unfortunately can't lay claim to that title, as most of them were forcibly abandoned. Fact number 31. Oklahoma has a panhandle because of slavery. Take a look at a U.S. map, and you might spot something unusual. A narrow strip of land stretching across the top of Texas, but belonging to Oklahoma. This panhandle is just 34 miles wide, making it one of the most distinctive quirks of the state's shape. Originally, it belonged to Texas, who wanted to enter the Union as a slave-owning state. Thanks to the Missouri Compromise, slavery wasn't allowed north of the 36° 30' latitude. So, Texas gave up a small sliver of its northern border for slavery. That land is now known as no man's land, and less than 1% of Oklahomans live there. Fact number 30. Cimarron County is the only county to border 4 states. Speaking of the Panhandle, thanks to its odd geography, it's also home to the only state to border 4 other states. Cimarron County, located in the western end of the Oklahoma Panhandle, borders Texas, Kansas, Colorado, and New Mexico. It has a population of almost 2,200, so very few people get to experience the ease of traveling to 4 states from there. Fact 29. Allen, South Dakota is the most landlocked point in the Western Hemisphere. Allen, South Dakota is the most inaccessible place by sea in the entire U.S., 1,025 miles from both the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Today, it's part of the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in Bannock County. Number 28. Texas is bigger than any country fully in the European continent. Everything's bigger in Texas, including apparently the state itself. Excluding Russia, which has most of its landmass in Asia, Texas is bigger than any individual European country fully on the continent itself. The state has an area of over 268,000 square miles. The biggest European country is Ukraine, at an area of almost 233,000 square miles, followed by France at an area of around 210,000 square miles. Fact number 27. Maryland is the only state with no natural lakes. You might think that the dry, desert-covered southwestern states would lack lakes, but no. Maryland is actually the only U.S. state without natural lakes. Lake Haby and Deep Creek Lake, 2 known Maryland lakes, are both man-made. Even Arizona has naturally occurring Mormon Lake and Stoneman Lake, though they occasionally dry up during long droughts. Fact number 26. Vermont was its own country for 14 years. People may think of Texas as the once independent state that also thinks of independence again from time to time, but actually, Vermont was its own country for 14 years. After the start of the Revolutionary War in 1776, Vermont decided it wasn't being treated well by either the British king or the state of New York, so it may as well go in its own direction. It declared itself independent in 1777. The newly formed country had its own currency and its own constitution, one that abolished slavery and gave all free men the right to vote. Though Vermont joined the newly formed United States in 1791, it still references its constitution when passing and enforcing laws today. Fact number 25. New York is south of Rome. It may sound strange, given New York's brisk winters and Rome's sunny reputation, but it's true. Most of Europe is warmed by the Atlantic current, making European places at the same latitude as US cities significantly warmer. New York is on almost the same latitude as Madrid. That's why, while the average high temperature in Rome in January is 55 degrees Fahrenheit, in New York it's 39 degrees Fahrenheit instead. Fact number 24. Louisiana is losing lands to the Gulf of Mexico. Due to increasing water levels and coastline erosion, Louisiana is slowly but steadily losing land to the Gulf of Mexico. And more than you might expect. Scientists estimate that every 100 minutes, Louisiana loses the equivalent of a football field to the Gulf. This is alarming news for everyone who lives in those areas, including the residents of New Orleans and the surrounding regions. One prediction estimates that at this rate, by 2080, substantial parts of southern Louisiana will be underwater completely. Fact 23. Oklahoma has the most tornadoes per capita. Oklahoma gets the not at all wanted distinction of being home to the most tornadoes per square mile than any other state in the US. The state gets around 50 tornadoes every year, most of them in the spring months between March and May, but they can also happen anytime. That's because Oklahoma is right in the middle of Tornado Alley, a stretch in the middle of the country where conditions are ripe for tornadoes to form. It's one of the only such geographic locations in the world, thanks to the clash between cold, dry air moving south from Canada and warm, moist air moving north from the Gulf of Mexico. Fact number 22. The Outer Banks are migrating west. Scientists have observed that the Outer Banks, located on the easternmost edge of North Carolina, are slowly moving west. This is thanks to the fact that the Outer Banks are sandbars that aren't anchored to anything. Every time there's a storm or strong winds, waves will pick up the sand from the lower eastern shores and deposit it further west. Over time, this is literally changing the location of the islands. Fact number 21. Hawaii's Big Island is growing. Some places in the US are steadily losing land, but others are apparently growing. Hawaii's Big Island, the youngest member of the Hawaiian archipelago, has gained around 500 acres of land since 1983. This is due to the island's frequent volcanic activity, as Kilauea and Mauna Loa still erupt from time to time. The lava flows eventually cool down and become new land deposits. This isn't happening with other, older Hawaiian islands like Oahu and Kauai because they're no longer actively volcanic, so their shoreline is slowly eroding instead. But the Big Island is determined to live up to its name. Fact 20. Arizona is the only state that contains all 4 US deserts. Well, a part of all 4 of them, at least. The 4 major US deserts are the Great Basin, the Sonoran, the Tubawan, and the Mojave deserts, and all of them come together, unsurprisingly, in one of the US's driest, hottest states. Fact number 19. You can mine for diamonds in Arkansas. People usually associate diamond mines with far-off destinations, but there's a massive diamond mine right here in the US, located in Arkansas. Crater of Diamonds State Park in Murfreesboro is a volcanic site that formed thousands of diamonds over millennia. Not only can you visit the park to learn about its volcanic origins and diamond mining, but you can actually look for diamonds yourself. And the chance of finding one isn't as tiny as you might think. So far, visitors have found over 35,000 diamonds in the park, including the largest diamond ever discovered in the US, a 40.23 carat gem nicknamed Uncle Sam. Fact number 18, and my favorite on this list. Kansas is flatter than a pancake. Literally. There's a lot of jokes about how flat the Midwest is, but some scientists decided to test out exactly how true those jokes were. Geographers from Texas State University and Arizona State University teamed up in 2003 to discover that some parts of Kansas are, quite literally, flatter than your average pancake. Fact 17. 11 states in the US have just one area code. Densely populated cities in the United States have multiple area codes for their phone numbers out of necessity, since they have to distribute numbers to millions and millions of people. On the flip side, 11 states in the US have such small populations that the entire state has only one area code. They include Alaska at 907, Wyoming 307, Delaware 302, New Hampshire 603, Maine 207, North Dakota 701, South Dakota 605, Vermont 802, Montana 406, Hawaii 808, and Rhode Island with 401. Fact number 16. Arizona has one of the best preserved meteor craters on Earth. While the famous meteor that killed the dinosaurs landed in what is today the Gulf of Mexico, meteors have left other craters all over the world. In fact, one of the best preserved meteor craters in the world is located in Arizona. The Beringer crater was formed over 50,000 years ago and now sits around 40 miles east of Flagstaff. You can walk to the crater's rim, but going into the crater itself is not allowed. Scientists think that the asteroid that formed it was only 98 feet to 164 feet wide, but it hit with such an enormous force that it left a 570-foot deep wound in the Earth's surface. Fact number 15. Utah is home to the largest natural bridge in the U.S. The U.S. has its fair share of engineering marvels, including iconic bridges like the Golden Gate and the Brooklyn Bridge. However, it's also home to some enormous natural bridges. Fittingly located in Arches National Park, Landscape Arch in Utah spans 290 feet in total. Others claim it extends over 300 feet, but the official measurement maxes out at 290. It's also a relatively thin, delicate-looking arch, only 6 feet wide at its narrowest point. A portion of it actually fell down in the 1990s, making it even thinner, but the arch is still hanging on today. Fact number 14. Only Maine shares a border with exactly one other state. Maine is the only state in the U.S. to share its border with just one other state, New Hampshire. To the north, it borders Canada. If you were to take a road trip through the contiguous 48 states and had to only cross each state once, you would inevitably start or end up in Maine. Fact number 13. Michigan has a floating post office. If you need to send your mail to a shipworker on the Detroit River, you'd better address it to zip code 48222. Known as the only floating zip code in the United States, it belongs to the postal ship J.W. Westcott II. It goes up and down the river, delivering mail to workers on nearby vessels. This is the only floating post office and zip code in the country. Fact number 12. Wisconsin has an official state microbe. Many states have state plants, state mottos, or state birds, but Wisconsin is the only state to have an official state microbe. But for Wisconsin, the microbe Lactococcus lactis is incredibly important to both its population and its economy. That's because Lactococcus lactis is used in cheesemaking, arguably Wisconsin's most important industry. The state is the biggest cheese producer in the U.S., making 2 to 3.5 billion pounds of cheese every year. And its dairy industry makes up 6.5% of the state's entire economy. Fact 11. One town in the U.S. experiences full polar night. Utqiagvik, formerly known as Barrow, experiences a full 64 days of polar night. From mid-November to mid-January, the sun doesn't rise at all, and the town is bathed in darkness. Between 4,300 and 5,000 people live in Utqiagvik, actually making it the 12th most populated city in Alaska. The population seems to deal with polar night just fine. Perhaps because they also have 2 months of full 24/7 summer days to look forward to after that. Fact 10. No one can agree on which state is the most mountainous. Alaska, Colorado, West Virginia, and Nevada all claim to be the most mountainous state in the country. How is it that with all our knowledge of geography today, the winner still can't be decided? Well, it's because each of them is correct in their own way. Alaska claims the title because it has the most mountains of any state, with over 4,000 of them named. But Alaska is also enormous, so a fair amount of it is covered by lowlands as well. Colorado lays claim to the title because, as we said before, it has the highest mean elevation of the US. On the other hand, West Virginia is the only state to be contained within the Appalachian mountain range. However, most of the northwestern part of the state sits on a plateau, and the mountains in West Virginia tend to be much lower than mountains in the west part of the country. Surprisingly, Nevada is the state most densely covered by mountains. Only the Carson Sink and Death Valley can lay claim to being flat. Meanwhile, Nevada has 2,000 named mountains, which may be less overall than Alaska, but way more per capita. Plus, almost everywhere you stand in Nevada, you can see a mountain somewhere in front of you. That makes it the winner in our opinion. Fact 9. South Carolina has an island full of monkeys where humans aren't allowed. Morgan Island off the state of South Carolina is home to over 4,000 rhesus monkeys. Oh wait, actually, the US government only placed 1,400 of them, but over time, their population expanded. If you want to see the monkeys, however, you'll have to take a boat trip around the island, as only approved researchers are allowed to step foot on the coast. Scientists are afraid of people disturbing or harming the animal population, a thing humans are prone to doing. Fact number 8. Kentucky has a moonbow. Though most people are familiar with rainbows, few know what a moonbow is. Perhaps because the conditions needed to form a moonbow are quite rare. But at Cumberland Falls in Kentucky, the mist at the base of the falls sometimes reflects the light coming off an especially bright and full or nearly full moon. This creates what locals call a moonbow. Fact number 7. Mount Washington recorded the fastest wind speed on Earth. Those who live in New Hampshire know that the hike up Mount Washington is deceptively dangerous and difficult, proven by the many search and rescue missions undertaken there every year. That's partly due to the harsh weather that batters the mountain, which may be why the fastest wind speed ever recorded on Earth was noted here in 1934. On one horrific day, the wind clocked in at 231 miles an hour. To understand just how fast that is, think of the fact that the Porsche 911, one of the world's premier sport cars, tops out at only 204 miles an hour. A skydiver falling headfirst towards the Earth will generally only reach 160 miles an hour. The wind only needs to reach 120 miles an hour to knock you down. So a speed of 230 miles an hour would quite literally throw you off the mountain. Fact number 6. Engineers made the Chicago River flow backwards. In the 19th century, the rapidly expanding town of Chicago had a problem. Though it had a prime location on the Chicago River, the river was actually flowing towards Lake Michigan, which happened to be the city's drinking water supply. And what it was carrying was sewage and waste. One day, William Boldenweck, the head of the sanitary district of Chicago, got an idea. What if he just reversed the river's flow? And he was serious. In 1900, after 8 years, the removals of 42 cubic yards of soil and rock and the construction of a 28-mile-long canal, that's exactly what he did. Fact number 5. Beaufort had a population of 1. Up until 2012, people driving through rural Wyoming would sometimes come across the town of Beaufort and do a double-take when they saw the welcome sign. Beaufort, population 1, elevation 8,000. The sole resident, Don Salmons, had lived in the area since 1980 with his family. After his wife died in 1992, Salmons decided to buy the town and began operating the Beaufort Trading Post. His son moved away in 2008, and Salmons eventually closed the store in 2012 and put the town up for auction. Fact number 4. Kansas City has a massive underground complex. Kansas City, Missouri has one of the largest underground business complexes in the world, named Subtropolis. Over 6 million feet of space are carved into the ground for this complex, which sits 150 feet below the city's surface. Today, the complex is mostly used as storage for e-commerce, pharmaceuticals, cars, records, and food distribution, to name a few, so the products can be kept away from exposure to the elements. Fact number 3. You can see the Earth curve at Bonneville Salt Flats. Located in Utah, the Bonneville Salt Flats are so flat, smooth, and never-ending that you can literally see the Earth curve when you look at them on a clear day. The alien-looking landscape is mostly known for being a place where people set land speed records, thanks to the aforementioned flatness. Fact number 2. One Hawaiian island is closed to the public. Unlike most private islands, Niihau wasn't closed to push locals out. It was preserved to protect them. Niihau has been owned by the Robinson family since 1864. They maintain strict control over who can visit the island to conserve the island's flora, fauna, and the indigenous culture of Niihau as well. The only people allowed on Niihau are native Hawaiian inhabitants, the Robinson family themselves, and invited guests. Finally, fact number 1. The U.S. town of Rough and Ready once declared itself an independent republic. Rough and Ready is located near Sacramento in California. In 1850, frustrated over the mining taxes and taxes on alcohol, it declared its independence from the Union, forming the Great Republic of Rough and Ready. The reason you may not have learned about this in history books is because independence only lasted 3 months. Strangely, until July 4th, feeling a surge of patriotism on the rest of the country's Independence Day, the citizens of Rough and Ready rejoined the United States. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. Really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.